I babysat a parrot. It said some disturbing things. My neighbor, Henry Johnson, would be out of town for 2 weeks. His wife had just left him and he needed to clear his head. So he asked me to house sit. As a broke college student, I said yes. The house-sitting duties included taking care of the Johnson's parrot, a 17-year-old African gray named Snickers. I didn't know much about birds, but he left me detailed instructions on how to take care of her. The first night of my job, I decided to stay for a few hours. I needed to get a problem set done, and the Johnsons' large empty house was the perfect study place. After feeding Snickers and giving her water, I got set up on the couch, but it wasn't long before she interrupted me. "Stop!" I whipped around, and Snickers was standing on her perch, staring at me with one gray eye. "Stop! Stop!" she repeated. Rolling my eyes, I went back to the problem set. Differential equations. Why did I decide to major in engineering again? I tapped my pencil against the page. Maybe it's time for a snack break. "Stop! Oh God, stop!" Snickers was bouncing from one perch to the other, bobbing her head as carefree as could be, but the way she said that sent shivers down my spine. She was clearly imitating someone in distress, probably just repeating from a movie, I told myself. But I was so wrong. "Stop! Oh God, stop! Henry, stop!" Henry. That was his name. Henry Johnson. I turned and stared at the parrot, and she stared back at me and whistled a few times, and then she continued. "Stop! Oh God, stop! Henry, stop! Oh God!" My blood turned to ice, and I stared at the parrot, my heart hammering in my chest. What exactly happened here? What is she repeating? I decided to call my parents, but they didn't seem to share my level of concern. "Your Aunt Sheila had a parrot," my dad said. "That thing would pick up all kinds of crazy words, movies, phone conversations. It'd scream, say the F word, everything. I wouldn't worry, Abby. Especially with Raquel leaving him and all. They probably had some huge fights the parrot picked up on. I wouldn't be surprised if it got worse." And he was right. Over the course of the next hour, Snickers continued to repeat "stop" and "Henry," but also said a variety of other things, from curses to pleasantries to movie quotes. "Fuck you! I'll be back! How are you today?" Finally, around 10 o'clock, I started getting ready to leave, threw my notebook in my backpack, switched off the lights, and headed for the door. "Goodbye, Snickers," I called out into the darkness, and then I reached for the doorknob. "Put the knife down!" I froze in my tracks. I couldn't see Snickers anymore, but I could hear her rustling about in her cage, talons clacking against the metal rails, feathers flapping in the silence. Maybe she's just quoting another movie, and maybe she's, "Put the knife down, Henry," the bird repeated, and my heart dropped. "Stop, oh God, stop, stop!" Snickers was agitated, and I could hear her feathers hitting the metal rails of her cage as she flapped her wings. She hopped back and forth, perch to perch, as she clicked her beak erratically. "Stop, oh God, stop!" I stood there for a long time. Seconds stretched into minutes, but she didn't say anything more, just clicked and whistled and flapped around in her cage. I flicked the lights back on, dropped my backpack on the floor, and made a beeline for the Johnsons' bedroom. Henry was very clear with his instructions. I wasn't to enter any of the bedrooms or the basement. I was to stay on the main level, no matter what. But I climbed the stairs anyway. After looking around, I found their bedroom, and it was neat and tidy, the burgundy bedspread laying smoothly over the mattress. I walked around, my heart hammering, hoping what I was imagining wasn't true, but it was. Because in their closet I found a small box containing Raquel Johnson's wallet and her driver's license. I made my way back down the stairs, my legs shaking. Snickers looked at me curiously from the cage. I turned out the lights, locked the door, and hurried down the sidewalk. As soon as I get home, I'm calling the cops. I pulled out my phone to see a text which was from Henry Johnson. I asked you not to enter the bedroom. I whipped around, but the dark sidewalk extended behind me, totally empty. How did he... Oh, a camera, of course. I broke into a run towards my parents' house at the corner. Almost there. I know what you saw. I sprinted harder, faster, my feet slapped against the pavement, almost there. I didn't pull out my phone, didn't stop until I was locked safely in my parents' house, and then I finally read the text he sent. If you tell anyone else, you will pay. I didn't listen. I called the police, and after a thorough search of his house, they found something horrible. Raquel's body in the freezer in the basement. Henry was trying to flee town, but got a head start by making it look like he was just going on vacation, so he hired me to house sit. I don't think he realized Snickers might repeat what she heard that night. And sometimes I wonder if Snickers knew more than she let on, because apparently she was Raquel's pet from before they were even married. Maybe she wasn't mindlessly repeating. Maybe she was trying to get justice for Raquel. My childhood dog just showed up at my house after 30 years. If I remember correctly, Shadow ran off when I was 7. The story I always heard about how he came into our lives was that my dad brought him home from a coworker who had tried to train him up as a hunting dog. Apparently, Shadow did not display the correct instincts. It makes sense, he was a husky Labrador mix, so he leaned a little bit into the willful side of his lineage. Everyone else remembers Shadow as the prototypical family dog. He was loyal, loving, protective. But I have different memories. Even though Shadow was a family dog, it was pretty clear from early on that he was most strongly connected to me. The thing is, I was always afraid of him. He'd follow me all around the house, nudging me this way and that if I wasn't doing what he wanted. I didn't want to be alone in my room with him, but he always managed to corner me in there and wouldn't leave when I told him to. More than once I'd do something bad and I'd swear it was because he told me to do it. I'd always chalked it up to my childhood imagination, but I remember specifically once when I was maybe 5 years old and my sister was standing up at the top of the stairs. He told me to push her down. "No, I won't," I said. My sister, who was a few years older, said, "Won't what?" Then Shadow stared at me and I heard his gruff voice speaking. "If you don't push her down the stairs, I'm going to go into her room tonight while she's sleeping and I'm going to rip her throat out." My sister didn't get seriously hurt, but she did take on quite a few bruises, and I think that's when our relationship started to deteriorate. It's never really recovered. I got in a lot of trouble, rightfully, and my parents kept a better watch over me for quite a while. Of course, they didn't believe me when I told them Shadow made me do it, and who would? "You're going to bang your head against the shelf until your parents come to check on you," the dog told me. "I don't want to. I can hear them downstairs right now. I can smell their blood. Do you know how easy it would be for me to kill them? Maybe I'll kill your mom first. Everyone will think you did it, since they all think you're a little serial killer already. Then after someone takes you away, I'll kill your father." I nearly knocked myself out banging my head against the cabinet. Shadow liked to come with us on errands. Everyone that saw him said he was the most beautiful dog. Majestic, they'd say. "Gorgeous dog, that one," or "Where did you get him? I'd love to have a dog like that." And to be fair, he was always the perfect dog for everyone else. Calm, well-mannered, and came when called. We'd be at the ice cream shop and all the teens working there would crowd around him to give him pets and a complimentary bowl of whipped cream. When they praised him, he'd look over at me with his beautiful dichromatic eyes, one blue, one brown, as if to say, "See, nobody will ever believe you." Nobody believed me about anything. I guess when I was young, I would tell really fanciful stories about when I used to be an adult. I had this whole life built up with a whole other family and career in the post office. And once I told my parents about it enough, I think they decided that I was simply one of those kids who couldn't tell reality from imagination. And they got mad at me with how long it went on. My mom tells me once specifically I'd awakened her sobbing, saying, "The bad man, he killed me. He broke into the house and killed me with a gun." Apparently, she had to be up early for work that morning, so she was especially angry. "It's just a dream, silly bug," she said, practically dragging me back to my room. I was a little older when I started to hear babies crying outside. Not every night, but maybe once every couple weeks. I'd awaken in the middle of the night and afraid. Then I'd hear it, a baby crying outside. My mom threatened to lock me in my room at night if I didn't stop waking her up every time I had a nightmare. And where had that dog gone? She thought if he was in the room, I'd feel protected and wouldn't have to wake her up every time I had a nightmare. I was at brunch with my mom recently when the topic came up about how I was always so imaginative as a child, and she filled me in on some information I wasn't aware of. When I was being awakened by those crying babies, there actually had been a string of child abductions in our city that have gone unsolved to this day. Apparently, it drove a bit of a satanic panic in our community that escalated until a mob from a church tried to burn down the house of a comic shop owner who sold Dungeons and Dragons materials. My mom always thought that I'd heard some snippets of the news and decided to make up a story about it. That's also part of why they were so thankful for Shadow's connection to me. They knew as long as he was by my side, nothing bad could happen to me. Then one day, he just disappeared. I was about 7 years old and hadn't heard him speak for months, and he seemed less and less interested in me. My mom drove around searching every night for weeks. We put up flyers on posts and fences, called the pound, repeated, and did everything we could to find him, but he was just gone. My family thought someone probably grabbed him from our yard since he was such a gorgeous dog, and from then on I'd had a more or less normal childhood. I'd forgotten all about him. Then he showed up inside my house today. I was walking upstairs to check on my son who was napping in his crib, and there he was in the room, gazing at my child. Every hair on my body stood on end. It's definitely him. I found an old family photograph and compared it to him, but how can a dog be nearly 40 years old? And how did he find me after all these years? My wife says I'm overreacting. It's just some dog that happens to look exactly like him. But the way he was looking at my son, that everyone always thought was protective, it's the same exact way he used to look at me. I think there's something evil in that dog, and I don't want my son raised with an animal like that. I do want to share with you that we have an email address if you want to share your stories with us to be read on the channel. That email address is thetruekingofcreepy@gmail.com. Again, that's thetruekingofcreepy@gmail.com as shown on the screen. We appreciate you very much and all of your support. This channel means the world to us, and so do you, and we look forward to also incorporating your stories from the community into future videos. Hope you all have a fantastic day, and as always everyone, stay creepy.